You're done, all of y'all. Oh my god!
Hostile assault turret detected.
Please let me get around that corner so you can hit my shrapnel trap. I dare you to come out.
I've sent a
Boom, boom, boom.
supply drop you.
Yo, this build is insane. It's been certified. I just had to play this conflict match to be sure. Okay, a full team of strikers. Y'all are about to get bodied. Every single one of y'all. Okay. Another one. Let's see. It's about to be a bad day for y'all right now. You squishy, bro. Thought she was about to escape. Oh, that's about good. Got you. Got one. Get him, get him, get him, get him. Let's go. Let's go. Got one. Got him. Let's go. Got him. Let's go. Let's go. I've made quite a bold statement in the thumbnail, didn't I? That this can literally wipe full groups. Well, I never make a statement without it being reconciled accordingly. This build worked far better than I initially expected it to, and as soon as I began playing it, immediately felt completely in my element. Now I know you're gonna love this one. Another amazing build on the spectrum from DPS all the way to skill. So like the video if you're hyped about what I'm gonna tell you, and subscribe if you feel inclined. Blast 45 is what I call this. If you know the significance of the 45, then comment that below. But have you ever wanted an explosive build that has the capability to insta-kill players at will? And with a skill haste this high, you'll never be unprepared for any engagement, be it defense or offense. I think I actually broke the skill haste record with this one. This also has some great survivability, and the damage you dish out with your weapon really packs a punch. Mind you, my intention when making builds is for them to be multifaceted. This means that they can easily perform in PvE heroic all the way to legendary difficulty, also that they're viable in PvP. This is the only way I know how to build. If it's possible, I'll make it happen. Now let's get into this description ASAP. Okay, we are here. Oh boy, you have no idea how powerful this build is. Well, maybe you do because you've seen the gameplay footage. Sometimes it's hard to express in words what something really does. And there are a few pieces on this build that I want to be a little bit better, like the chest piece. But even with that, the build is insane. Now I'm going to get right into this. Let's go straight to the specializations first to see what this is all about, okay? Demolitionist specialization is what I'm using. I like to use technician, but I highly suggest that when using explosive builds, mostly you must use demolitionist specialization because first of all, you have the artillery turret, which can only be accessed when using the demolitionist specialization. It's not really my cup of tea. It's actually pretty crazy, especially in conflict when people are camping in the spawn. This literally shoots in the spawn when no other skill can. So this gives you an advantage for campers and people who try to sit in certain areas. It just takes a little bit more skill than others. This also has something called explosive ordnance, which gives you 10% explosive damage. Do you know how valuable explosive damage is on the Division 2, especially since they got rid of the explosive damage attribute that you can roll on your gear? You want to find as much explosive damage as you can. One more thing, it has crisis response, where when you're shooting an enemy, face tanking, and you lose your armor, it refills the clip. So you could continue shooting, and this is great with the primary weapon I'm using, which I'm going to show you in a second. One more thing, man, this skill tree has some great attributes for the Demolitionist. Incombustible. Increases your burn resistance by 20%. Now this is even better. On top of the fact that we have diminishing returns, it's just great to have resistances. And make sure you have assault rifle for your primary weapon to give you 15% increased damage on that. Now let's get straight into this build, man. Alright, so the purpose of it is to use whatever explosive skill that you want and have them on a real low cooldown. And it was only made possible with this patch and this build, okay? So for the primary, I'm using the capacitor, of course. This is how you're able to hit so hard with your weapon, because with each skill tier, it grants 7.5% weapon damage. I can't stress this enough. Now, on the King build that I made, I showed this weapon with that build, but at that time, I did not have damage to target shot of cover rolled on it. I was getting a lot of complaints in the comment section saying that after they rolled damage to target shot of cover on here, or rather, after they recalibrated it until they got damage to target shot of cover, they weren't able to optimize damage to armor. You literally have to get lucky in order to get a 12% damage to armor roll. Fortunately, I got lucky with 11%, 1% less than max. I could just optimize assault rifle damage and the target shot of cover damage. Now, the reason this happens is because damage to armor is not on the core attribute list for the weapons like all the other ones are, like health damage and other things. So the game doesn't really recognize this. Somebody actually said this in the comment section, and I quote, "I noticed this from day one because it was the first exotic I rolled damage to target shot of cover on, and it sucks because there's not a 12% damage to armor for the AR library." So just remember that if you're going to do this, make sure you have enough exotic components to roll this until you get a good damage to armor attribute. Moving on, this also gives you skill damage for shooting enemies up to a cap of 40, and it gives you 1.5% each stack, so you can get up to 60%. And for my secondary, I'm using the Surge, which gives me perfect spike. Headshots grant 25% skill damage for 15 seconds. I don't really use this that much. You can, which would be something great to use. But honestly, like I said, the capacitor is your go-to for almost everything. It gives you skill damage, right? It gives you weapon damage. So these are pretty much placeholders, and I'm using the Dicero Special simply because it's just a specialization specific pistol, and it looks pretty cool. Now, on to the build. First of all, we're using a Ninja Bike bag. Now, this bag really grew on me. When I first looked at it, I'm like, man, you're missing all of these great talents. Like you see Anarchist Cookbook with Perfectly Wicked. You're missing Vigilance. You're missing Concussion. All kind of backpack talents that give you damage that when you put this backpack on, you're losing out. But that's not the case. You have to use this a certain way. I'm tired of these people. You have to use this a certain way, in a way that allows you to stack damage bonuses or attributes so that the backpack talent doesn't really matter. I'm sorry I had to go outside, but I honestly think that the developers did this on purpose to where they have NPCs walking in front of your screen left and right. I don't get it. It takes me out of my menu. It's just very annoying. Hopefully it doesn't happen out here. But like I said, the Ninja Bike backpack is perfect for this because even if you're losing out on certain damages, it's compensating for so much more. For example, the massive amount of skill haste that I have on this build. Okay, now let's talk about the chest piece first. Okay, it's the Palisade Steelwork named chest piece called Combustor. Now this is only accessible with the named version because we already have explosive delivery, which whenever you throw a skill 1.5 seconds after landing, it creates an explosion damaging enemies within 5 meters. But this is the part that they added onto this named version. It says afterwards, explosions will occur every 5 seconds. Damage scales with skill tier, dealing 25 to 100% damage of concussion grenade. And this is why it's so important to have 6 skill tiers. And if you want to capitalize on this damage, make sure that the concussion grenade is equipped, right? So with the explosive damage that I have on this build, the concussion grenade is gonna hit its hardest. Along with the 6 skill tiers that I have, it's maximum damage, y'all. I'm going to show you the amount of explosive damage that I have on this build and the stats after this. Also the skill haste bonus. Now Palisade Steelwork doesn't really do anything for your skill haste or your skill damage for that matter. What it does, it gives you armor on kill, and health. That's fine for your survivability, but the main reason I have it is for this talent. And that's what I was talking about. I wanted a better chest piece. I want one that has skill haste already on it. Skill haste and skill damage would be the perfect chest piece. But I have a skill haste mod, along with the other 2 that are in the mask and the backpack. And on this build, I have 3 brands that have skill haste natively baked into them. Hannah you. First piece is skill haste, second piece is skill damage. And you want to roll skill haste and skill damage on here. Now, it's your choice of what you want to roll on here. I think that for this, usually, you know, I usually roll like skill damage and crit damage, or skill haste and crit chance, something of that combination. But on this, you want to go overkill. You want to have skill haste and skill damage on every piece to capitalize on these explosions and the damage you're going to deal with the explosions. You're already going to deal a lot of damage with your capacitor without the amount of crit. But with this build, the capacitor is the secondary source of damage. Your primary are your explosive skills, and I'm going to get to that after I describe this right here. Now the holster, another brand that gives you skill haste for its first piece, another skill tier to help get you to that 6, especially since I'm not using technician. And of course, this gives you 15% weapon damage, so this is basically a weapon core, and I rolled skill haste on here. Alright, the 𝐸𝐴 gloves, 15% critical damage, and this right here is where you need to capitalize on the explosive damage. This is one of the brands that underwent one of the buffs. Okay, for the 2-piece, it gives you explosive damage. It used to be 15%. They gave it a 5% buff, giving you 20. That is a lot of explosive damage for a 2-piece. And I'm only able to get this 2-piece with a Ninja Bike bag. This is what I was talking about. When you have the Ninja Bike backpack, even though you don't have those talents that allow you to have extra damage here and there, it's allowing me to get these 2-piece bonuses for skill damage, for explosive damage, and especially for this right here, an extra skill tier, and for the China Light knee pads, 20% skill haste. Now, if I'm not wrong, this is something that was also buffed. This was not 20% skill haste before. And for the first piece is 15% explosive damage. Now, I wasn't able to get skill damage right here. Like I said, you want to make sure you have skill damage and skill haste roll on every piece. Now let's talk about the skills. These right here are not set in stone. These aren't what you have to use. You have a full spectrum at your beck and call. Use whatever your heart's desire. In PvE, you might want to use the shrapnel trap, simply because the shrapnel trap is something that you can throw on the ground. You can capitalize the combustor talent, explosive delivery, for as long as this thing is down. You get an explosion every 5 seconds. The cooldown is only 27 seconds. Do you know how high the cooldown is if you don't have this much skill haste? Yeah, it's tough. The duration is 75 seconds. So if these explosions or all the traps don't detonate right away or at all, they just sit on the battlefield, you're going to be getting those explosions every 5 seconds. And you can use this skill as like an area of denial. That's one thing I love about the shrapnel trap. It completely separates teams. It destabilizes them. I know you saw that first clip when I threw that shrapnel trap on that group and it just destroyed them when I was crawling. It actually protected me when I was about to die. Come on, man, this thing is crazy. And it's really great in PvE. And I wanted to use it in PvP to show you how effective it is even in that. This is one of my favorite skill types, no matter which one I'm using, whether it be the EMP, the fire sticky bomb, and this. This right here will pretty much destroy almost anybody that has 1 million armor, because it does pretty much 1 million armor without the buffs, mind you. Because remember, when you're using the capacitor, it gives you more skill damage. So this is going to be well over 1 million. It's going to give you 60% extra. Another explosive skill is the artillery turret. And this is the one that's specific to the demolitionist specialization. You can't get this without using the spec. 8.4 second cooldown. You will never be without this. I'm not as good with that as other people are. They sit there and use a bulwark shield and then throw that on the ground. You could actually do that. You can use that type of playstyle. Use a bulwark shield and drop the turret and do your thing. But I like to play this another way. I want to utilize both of my skills, right? Another skill you have, the Stinger Hive. Now, I made a build a long time ago. I don't know if they changed this because I made this build like 2 years ago, and it was called Indestructible. And I was talking about how the Stinger drones are explosive damage because the resistances that I had on that build were like, what, 70% explosive resistance. And when somebody put a hive down, those little Stinger drones, they weren't hurting me at all. You're going to be using this for the damage that the drones deal when they come out. It's also a skill that you can drop on the ground utilizing the combustor explosive delivery talent. Now there are 2 more skills that you can use, the Firefly, and this is great, right? Because the cooldown for this is really low, right? The highest is 21% for Blinder, but these are the 2 you're going to worry about, the Burster and Demolisher. The Demolisher is what destroys like enemy weak points and skill proxies. Also, environmental explosions like the explosive barrels. But this right here is what I like to use in PvP too, right? It's the Burster Firefly. It attaches explosive charges to targets that detonate if 2 are in close proximity. I use this so much to the point where I'm like, you know what, let me not use it as much. Let me not show as much footage in the gameplay as I did before. I want to be more versatile, but this also works great in tandem with the sticky bomb because this also deals almost 1,000,000 damage. So if you throw this on somebody, it detonates, and then use the sticky bomb right after that, it's pretty much going to put anyone down who has upwards of 2 million armor. Anybody who got 1 million armor, you might as well forget about it, bro. You're done for. But you can attach this to skills and players alike. So if somebody drops a mortar or a turret or anything that they have near them, like a defender drone, which everybody's using nowadays, you can attach this to the defender drone and that player, and because they're in close proximity, it's going to detonate. It's the perfect skill. And finally, the mighty secret mine. Oh boy, I like all 3 of these, man. But for this build, you're going to be using either this one, the cluster, or the explosive seeker. Now this is crazy, 15-second cooldown, and then over 500,000 PvP damage, right? And then the bleed damage that it deals afterwards. So I suggest using this in PvP, and in the PvE you can use these cluster seeker mines. It's only a 21-second cooldown, and you know this is another one of those high cooldown skills if you don't have enough skill haste. So 21 seconds is nothing, especially in PvE. And you know, I don't normally talk about my skills that much or that long. I just usually say, yo, I'm using this skill, I'm using that skill, give a brief description. But the way that you can use these skills and the skill haste that it has is insane. So finally, let me show you the stats. Doesn't have much crit chance or damage. That does not matter at all. You got that armor damage and targets out of cover damage on your capacitor, so you're pretty much good there. Now if you look, I have 45% explosive damage on this build, which signifies the build's name, Blast 45, if you guys didn't catch it already. And that's the maximum amount of skill damage you can have on your build. Now look at this skill haste bonus, 121.1% skill haste. It can be higher, most definitely. There are a few pieces that I don't have skill haste roll on. I think the only 2 actually is the Ninja Bike backpack and the combustor chest piece. Other than that, I have the most skill haste you can get. If you can get more, then please share below. But that's pretty much it for this build, man. I'm so hyped about this. These type of builds get me in my element 100%. And this is when I'm best in PvP, because it's like you can't really fight me. If I have a good team, even if I'm solo, man, this is really hard to deal with something like this. Back-to-back explosive skills and just somebody on your head is really difficult, man. So let me know what you think about this down below. I appreciate you stopping by and watching to the end. And if you made it here, you're a GOAT. And I want you to comment Blast 45. Make sure you like the video and subscribe to my channel if you're new here. I'll see you in the next one, fam. Be right out.